Hey, good evening. This is Joe LaBarbera. I'm speaking to you from my new channel, Climb to Glory. Thank you all for subscribing. I got over 1,100 subscribers on my Facebook, Climb to Glory, and I'm doing okay on the YouTube channel. The essence of the channel, as you know, is to affect positive political, economic change in the community and to help very strong candidates and other advocates of good programs and good policies succeed and become successful using smart strategy and effective analysis. Rather than some of the bad practices that have caused bad political operations and bad government and bad economic policy to happen. I hope you like our analysis videos. But today I want to talk to you about something. I want to talk about a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and that is precision agriculture. Precision agriculture in terms of technology and sensors and agronomist assessments that can be leveraged to improve American farming. American agriculture is in the horns of a dilemma. It's been a process occurring since the 1970s. In an ideal world, and I think everybody agrees, every town, every locality has a food supply. This way, it's sustainable. This way, larger, more global economic disruptions cannot cause starvation events and events that inhibit people from being able to eat. America hasn't seen famine, real famine, since the Great Depression. And that's been the blessing of, first of all, we're an incredibly resource rich country. And the second blessing is we've been standing on the shoulders of giants. I mean, this nation's agricultural system was built by some of the most incredible and most industrious and ingenuitive individuals that ever walked the face of the earth. American agriculture has been revolutionary. The world now is in the population of billions. Let me get some because of what America was able to do. Our ability to absorb immigration positively the right way. We've been able to genetically splice wheat. That was a Norwegian immigrant who taught Americans to do that. Americans have been able to farm in mass and of epic production year round. It's We've been able to create incredible agricultural estates in remote areas, areas that are lacking in resources. This country is historically the greatest thing to ever happen to the planet Earth in terms of agriculture. Well, that's going away. That's going away. The last few years, I've made an incredible effort in studying the agriculture as an economy. Agriculture as a way of life, agriculture as a culture, and agriculture as far as how it operates in America. And what I found is that we've lost the ability for local farms to sustain local communities. So here's how I'm going to elaborate on that. Here's how I'm going to explain that. In your town, look at the number of people in your town, in your county, in your locality. What I mean is where you live and the people who live there. Ask yourself, is there enough farming in your area that could feed your population year round, year after year, in various types of climate surges? Whether we have droughts, whether we have downpours, monsoons, blizzards, whatever. The whole spectrum of climate change, climate issues, whatever. Do you feel that the 10,000 people that call yourself your town under your local governance that has effect over you, your county, your city, do you believe that is supported, actually supported by existing agricultural infrastructure? I believe that most people would say absolutely not. Absolutely not. Even people who live in farm country. And here's why. What is most of the farm product that is actually being produced and actually being absorbed into humanity? It isn't foods that are going into the local population. There are cash crops that are being sent overseas. It's being overseas to support American policies that were designed to bring down the Soviet Union during the Cold War. In 1972, the United States got off the gold standard, so the United States could then have a fiat currency and outspend the Soviet Union. Because the United States had an incredible military presence and a very sustainable economic infrastructure, manufacturing especially and agriculture, that the Soviet Union did not have, the United States knew that with a fiat currency, this was Nixon's Treasury Department, they knew that with a fiat currency, the United States could effectively bankrupt the Soviet Union. And we did. And we did. And no one engineered it as well as Ronald Reagan, the great Ronald Reagan. And their policies were good for that time. The policies did harm and it was not meant to be irreparable, but they did harm American manufacturing and American agriculture. And the reason they harmed it was because these policies supported outsourcing labor and it supported exports as opposed to imports. So, therefore, in the exports of large scale type product rather than the product that would be currently cultivated or refined or made for public consumption. These policies were done in a way, I said, to bring down the Soviet Union, but weren't meant to be permanent. Now, the policies never stopped because with Reagan's departure, so did the Reagan Revolution depart, and the correction was never made. It was kind of like the great reforms of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He warned often. He said deficit spending, an entitlement culture, all these things cannot be for perpetuity. The design was just to get America back to being a very prosperous capitalist nation and to keep the American experiment on track. They were not meant to be a foundational aspect of the American experience. Yet they were, and they became that way because of corruption. After Reagan, the Bushes, the neocons, the people we call the neocons for neoconservative, they're an interesting group. I'm not going to digress into who they are and how they think that way and why they think that way, but the overwhelming majority of people today agree they're a colossal record of colossal failure. I myself spent my entire life, my entire adult life up until a few years ago, serving the neocon agenda. I fought in 5 combat tours, Iraq and Afghanistan. I spent my entire life, adult life, practically in the U.S. military, and it was the policies and the beliefs of the neocons, the Bushes, the Cheneys, the Wolfowitzes, the Rand Institute, that I that was my life. I don't regret it. I would do it all over again because it was in service of my country. And like I was always told as a young recruit, never apologize for anything you do for your country. And I believe in that to this day. And I'll never forget what I've done for my country. Like nobody else should. No one else should ever forget any service they've done for the sake of their country, their faith, or their family. What the neocons have failed to do is the neocons have failed to reverse a large scale economic and cultural degradation that has happened. And I believe all that goes back to agriculture. America was founded as an agricultural giant. It was founded that way. There's a belief that says, well, some of the founders, like Hamilton, they were financiers, but they never would have said destroy the small farms. They never would have said stop Americans from being able to build farms, to maintain farms, to pass down great farms to their families, etc. They never would have said that. Nowhere, and they would have imagined that we would live in a society today where multiple interests, whether they be federal government, local government, or corporate, undermine and crush the ability of the American to be an entrepreneur in agriculture. But that is so the case today. And the reason it's the case is because we have a monopoly on processing in agriculture. We have a monopoly on the ability to take food from when it's grown or butchered and take this food and then transport it, prepare it, transport it, and then supply it to the consumer. That is controlled by small organizations, by a small amount of groups that are very large and powerful. And these groups exist for the purpose of keeping the American agriculture in a very weakened state. So this way it can operate in support of sending large cash crops overseas and importing food, edible food, proteins and fruits and other edibles and certain types of vegetables and importing from overseas. And the reason is because we wanted to import from other countries for the reason of not allowing their economies to fail. Because if their economies failed, they would then fall under the umbrella of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, of course, was trying to establish communism in all these countries by saying these big bad Americans are oppressing you and stopping you from growing and succeeding. So what we're going to do is we're going to subsidize you so this way you can be communist and then you can work against American policies. So our import and export policies are a dinosaur of that era. Well, that era is gone. That era is gone. I mean, we can talk about Russian boogeymen. We can talk about Chinese boogeymen. These are a different set of problems. This isn't a Soviet Union that is actively trying to overthrow governments and instill puppet regimes all over the world in order to checkmate the United States. Whereas that was an attempt, and not even a very plausibly happening attempt, but it was an attempt that was going on from the 1920s through the 1980s. That's gone now. It doesn't exist. It was we've soundly defeated it through overwhelming economic policies that just were too much for them to bear. There's more to it than that, but there's no point in digressing. What has to be understood is that you're a small town, your county, or your large city cannot be sustained by the geographically by agricultural communities in geographic proximity. That doesn't exist. Now, some would argue, well, why is that even necessary? Why is that even necessary? And how much are we really importing anyway? Well, the answer is 20 to 25%. The USDA says 20%. Some accounts say 25, but it's a lot. And why is only why? Oh, it's only 20, 25%. No, that's huge. That's huge. A disruption to the supply chain could cause starvation. It could cause famine. I'll give you some perspective. The Roman Empire, at their height, imported 13 to 15% of their food. During their decline, they maintained that level of import. And when their supply chain was disrupted, and we're talking a succession of numerous disruptions from the mid 300s AD all the way into around 500 AD, after the so-called fall, when the Huns came in and sacked Rome, Gothic tribes sacked Rome, Roman Empire still sort of existed, but their imports slowly dropped off, and that set a ripple effect to where the actual Roman Empire collapsed. And then what did they do? Everybody resorted to small city states, but the infrastructure, the agricultural infrastructure, was not there to support the population. So you had tremendous population loss, horrific population loss. I mean, Rome, according to Goldsworthy, the Roman population fell from over 1 million people to down to 50,000 in the space of less than a century. Could you imagine that in America, that same proportion? 1 million to 50,000? Now times that 300 million to the same proportion. That would be a horrific loss of population. It would be apocalyptic. It would be a nightmare. I'm not predicting that. I don't think it would happen to that extreme, but we are vulnerable to these kinds of disruption events because of our weakness in being an unsustainable agricultural nation. Now, does the infrastructure exist currently? Well, it used to. It used to. So, to turn farms back into sustainable operations that can support local communities, agriculture has to go back old school in a way. It has to become regenerative. It has to have smart land management practices. Now, Americans, we weren't always good at land management. Often we kind of sucked at it, and that's why we had the Dust Bowl occur, which was one of the feeders and one of the causes of the Great Depression. Mass amount of immigration going out to settle farms in the Midwest. Burn slash cut, burn slash. They recognized they had incredible machinery in which to plant, seed, harvest, and they abuse the land and take away the buffalo, which their intensive grazing with their fertilization of the soil, the feces, and their hoofs, mulching, tearing up the soil, making it less brittle, being able to hold moisture in the fertilization, being able to create rain, create moisture into the sky, which created rain. All that was a cycle that was working brilliantly. Alan Savory, brilliant African scientist and naturalist. Wrote a book on holistic land management, which is the gold standard. A lot of people talk holistic land management, but Savory actually does it. He does it so effectively. He actually does de-desertification, where he, through intensive animal grazing and very smart land management practices and very smart type planting the right crops in the right areas, he's actually able to reverse desertification. He has areas where were once desert, he's now turned into grassland. It's phenomenal what he's done, and that holds true for our current situation. The USDA woke up. The Bureau of Land Management was established. There was all kinds of government programs that then reversed the damage that the wrong kind of farming and the wrong kind of ranching was causing. Where are we at today? Where we're at today is the American farmer, the American rancher, is in the horns of a dilemma. To practice appropriate farming techniques or ranching techniques, they wouldn't be able to survive. They wouldn't be able to make money. To not practice them and to work on a large scale, they would have to sell out to large scale big ag, as they call it. These present problems, and the problem is big ag works for lobbyists, big ag works for foreign interests, and big ag works to maximize profit potential. Now, there's no issue with that. If anybody is America is a capitalist nation. It's an essential aspect to Americanism, but this isn't capitalism. A monopoly and control of a market like big ag has and to be backed by government policy that works against the interests of the American people, that's not capitalism. In fact, if anything, that's socialism gone run amok. So, what do we do? What do we do? We have farmers. Show me a farmer that really makes a big profit. First, I'll say this: go to any farm, go to any local farm. See if that farmer is truly making a great profit. I'll bet you anything. Just try me out. Just try me out. He'll probably have a day job. His wife will probably have a day job. At the same time, he will probably be relying on grants and subsidies to keep his farm going. Then you ask, why is he even farming? And the answer is love for the land, legacy to pass on to his kids, and just a phenomenal belief in the way of life. I can tell you, since I've been farming, and I just have a small farm. It's basically a hobby farm. I'm turning into an actual business farm. I got to tell you, it's a wonderful way of life. It's become part of my identity, part of my soul. It helps the identity of my children, of my family, and it helps me become a better member of my community. And it grounds me in the soil, it grounds me in the community. And I got to say, I'm much more a better man. I'm a much better man because of my farm and because of the way I'm bound to it and the way I believe it helps people. The pleasure I get when people report back how much they enjoy what I produce and how much satisfaction and happiness it gives them. I can't even describe the joy in that. So that's why people farm. The American farmer, especially today, is a true lover of the environment, a true lover of creation, and a true member of his community. So, with the current state of farming as it is, where these farmers aren't making profits, they're in danger of dying out. And we're in danger of relying more and more on big agriculture. Now, wherever you are in the political spectrum, understand this: big agriculture is not something that cares about individual rights, the environment, conservation. They don't care about any of that. Big agriculture's goal is to become as rich and powerful as possible, and they're not linked to any nation or any state or any city or any community. They're not linked to any belief system. Their only thing is about themselves. So you have a real issue here. The issue is they undercut and they create a system to where the small farmer can't exist. Um, for a small farmer to exist, he has to make a profit. Well, you can't have a profit if a system exists that people are going to get cheaper imports from other else. Now, the imports we're bringing in cause the prices to drop, right? It's just simple economics, but it doesn't have to be that way. If we had enough local farmers, the law of economics says that they would be able to be competitive as it is. And then what would subsequently be competitive is the operating expenses that is currently very high would subsequently be competitive as well. So who can fix this? Well, the farmers can't. So local counties, local municipalities, either through subsidization, tax reduction, or smart policies, can create microeconomies in their area, which can facilitate sustainable farming. Basically, your local town can help out the farmers by not by giving them anything, but by creating markets for them to where they can grow and compete. And then they can be their product directly to their table. Anywhere you live, you see farms doing this already. You'll see a particular farm. Hey, why go to Acme or ShopRite or Vaughn's or whatever grocery stores in your area? Yeah, they'll say they sell local food, but they don't. It's all going through big processors. I don't care what the label says, it's all going through big processors. But when you go to a local farmer, he's going through a local butcher. USDA certified, everything's on the up and up. In fact, it's probably safer than a big store. And you're getting straight from that farm. And you're getting what that farmer put into it, and you know exactly what went into it. This is significant. Let's just take meat, for example. Let's just take meat. Big Ag, or a big beef producer, they call them the Big Four. These Big Four companies, look them up. They're all over YouTube. You'll hear all about them. They will force all the ranchers and producers of meat to bring all their animals into an auction. They will bid until they get the price they want, and then they will completely screw the farmer or the rancher. They will give them bottom dollar. Quality's not looked at. The same cows that probably shouldn't be eaten, the same sheep that probably shouldn't be eaten, the same pigs that probably shouldn't be slaughtered are going to be in there with the best ones. So you never know what you're going to get from these crazy hurricanes of animals. And then they get bottom dollar for it because the producers, the farmers, and the ranchers don't have a choice. They don't have the ability, the logistical ability to get their product to market and still make a profit. So then the big ag, the big four, they have the processors, and they're the ones who control this. So the auctioneers send the animals to the processors, and then they put them in the feedlots. Now this is what the environmentalists are talking about when they say the cow farts are destroying the environment. And then this is what the land people talk about when they say this is bad for the water table and bad for the soil. They're right. And look, I'm a right wing conservative. I'm a right wing conservative. I was president of the Skylands Tea Party. I'm a Trump supporter. I'm a right wing guy. And I am going to tell you, I mean it. These feedlots are disgusting and they're bad for everybody. They're not good for the ranchers. They're not good for the communities. They're not good for the people eating the food. Can you imagine? And I've seen the feedlots. You drive past for miles, and all you see are thousands and thousands of animals shoved into pens. These animals are standing in piles and piles of their own excrement. They're being fed. They're being kept hungry until they're force fed huge amounts of corn that's been grown with chemical and huge amounts of crap they're being fed. It's like McDonald's. So imagine I get 100 humans. I put you in 100 humans. I stack you in a living room, and I force feed you McDonald's or Burger King for a certain period of time to fatten you up. How healthy how healthy do you think that is for the animal? Well, poor animal. And what, Joe? What are you, a bleeding heart? Come on, Joe. They're livestock. They should be eaten. Well, I know this for a fact. I'm a livestock guy, but that's okay. That's okay. Here's the problem: when you eat that meat, you're eating the hormone and the crap and the antibiotics that needs to keep these animals from becoming infected in the putrid and disgusted feedlot that they're in. So you're eating the garbage that was put into them to make them as profitable as possible. So now think about this: you're the big four. You're the big four. You've now bought. You're a big four company. You're a processor. You now get all these cattle in to make steaks and burger, and hamburger, and all that stuff. You shove them in a lot. You get them for $1 a pound. You know you can sell it for $4 to $5 a pound. You want more pounds. So then you take all this crap that costs you almost nothing and you fatten these animals up with. And then you butcher them, you get more pounds to sell. When you do this in mass, you increase your profit margin. Good for them. What does it do for you, the consumer? So the people who get screwed by this system are the producer, the farmer, and the rancher who we love and we want to keep. Because this type of lifestyle, this kind of way of life is a bedrock of not only our culture, but these are the people who feed us when there's another depression. These are the people who feed us when things go tits up. And it's bad for them. And then it's bad for you, the person who's eating it. Because you're eating a carcinogenic, crappy product. And you're eating something that really isn't nutritious. You're eating something that's really just going to long term make you sick. And then good, you can be 50 years old, full of disease, and you can go to Big Pharma, and then Big Pharma now is going to pump you full of drugs. You see the system? It's not conspiracy. This is fact. This is fact. This is a crappy, crappy system that we live under. We live under a really crappy system for food and health. We're only unique in America with this, by the way. Well, the Chinese are worse, but in America, this is unique to us. Europe isn't doing this. South America isn't doing this. These countries aren't committing suicide by destroying their agricultural industry. That's what we're doing. We'll take it further. Fruit, apples, pears, anything you like to eat, all these goodies that you see in the store year round. They're coming from places that are importing to us, and they're being raised and produced so effectively. Why? Why can a massive plantation in California, let's say, even in America, why can they produce so much food effectively? Well, it's because of their use of chemicals. In fact, why are chemical companies like BASF, why are these in Monsanto, why are these chemical companies so prolific in the agriculture? They own the agricultural industry because their chemicals is what's creating all this food. So ask yourself, are you eating the chemical or are you eating the food? What would you rather have? Apples from nurseries, producing apples year round in nurseries outside your town or in orchards outside your town, depending on the weather. What would you rather have? That? Or would you rather get apples from, or grapes or whatever, from one of these large scale plantations, etc.? What would you rather have? Oh, I grow my own apples, grow my own pears. I have my own garden. It supplements what we have, but it's not a large enough operation. People all over, though, farmers all over, are trying and working hard to build this. It's hard for them to build this because operational expenses are so high. Not only are operational expenses so high, they're limited in manpower because they can't afford labor. Farm labor is, it's in modern era, and it was in history, but now it's pure exploitation. It's pure exploitation. Why would a big farm like in California, they import illegal immigrants for the point of paying them dirt, and then they just expel these people to either be deported or be lost in America without any way to succeed or sustain themselves. And then they work these people to the bone to get their product to be able to sell to you. All this is wrong. All this is bad for the country, and all this is bad for the future. So here's the solution. Here's the solution. Unlike some people of our political persuasion, I just don't bitch about it. I have a solution about it. I've been working on it for several years. The solution is a combination of local government policy and technology. The technology exists in precision agriculture, and Europe, Israel's phenomenal at this, by the way. If you want to see precision agriculture done good, go to Europe, go to Israel. There's a lot of there's definitions for precision agriculture. There's the International Precision Agriculture Institute. They meet once a year. I think last year they met in Minnesota, and they have definitions. I'm going to tell you my definition for precision agriculture: systems of sensors and agronomist assessments synchronized to eliminate farming operational costs, get maximum productivity and longevity to the soil and to the animals, with the end state of sustainable production. That's it. That's it. So we're gonna have sensors that tell us what we need to know and what resources we need to use to eliminate as many operational costs as possible. I'll break it down. Here's precision agriculture. Crops. Crops. You have a field or a network of fields and lands. With satellite technology, you can look at and get the identify optimal pieces of land based on water table, based on soil composition, based on certain minerals, based on weather patterns. You combine that data, you assess it, and agronomists can come in and say, and he can literally divide up the land into areas and say, these are the optimal areas for these kinds of crops, this kind of fruit, whatever. You then are oriented to those specific areas. You can then use drones and ground sensors to get further granularity and determine exactly which parts of those areas should be planted most extensively. When you see the big slashes, the big squares, now real effective precision agriculture will orient it so it look like little pockets. So over here you'll be growing, let's say, a strawberry patch. Over here would be an orchard. And this row here will be wheat, etc., etc. And this I'm talking hundreds of acres here, hundreds of acres there, hundreds of acres there. And with that orientation, you can further put ground sensors in that can give you the assessment of exactly how much fertilizer and how much chemical to use, so you're not just saturating the land with chemical. When you saturate the land with chemical over the course of a certain period of time, you're going to eliminate the productivity of that, which is almost a step backwards. One of the reasons Western civilization flourished was because of rotational crops. If anybody was fortunate enough to have actual history taught to them in school, like I was, now they don't do that anymore. Now it's sad. But we learned that crop rotations were the reason Western civilization flourished, because we learned if you plant the same thing over and over again, you kill the soil. And that's one of the main problems in the Middle East. I led an initiative as a young officer in Iraq in 2004 where we were trying to help the local tribes in their farming. And as we did that, we noticed that the local farmers literally planted the same thing over and over again, and they kept flooding the field over and over again. And then every 20 years, there would just be a disaster where they couldn't grow anything, and it would just everybody would just have a problem and starve, and they'd either move to another village or whatever. So we actually, and this our civil affairs guys actually imported experts to start or improve an agricultural college in West Baghdad. And we started putting seed out and started advising them. And we went through that whole errand. It turned out to be a fool's errand because of a lot of circumstances. But nevertheless, that's the way it was done wrong. It was done wrong. And in the West, in Western Europe, well, in Europe in general, the West, especially in America, crop rotation was something that was very wise and smart. Now, the mass amounts of immigrants who went out and settled the Midwest from the 1850s through the early in the 1920s, they didn't do that. They didn't do that. And as a result, we looked at a lot of soil damage, which turned the American Midwest into a big desert, which ended up ending my great grandfather on my mother's side, destroyed his farm. His farm was destroyed during the Dust Bowl. They lost everything. And that was because of all the bad land management practices that were done. So precision agriculture is a phenomenal aid in managing the soil and managing what goes into the soil. As in the ultimate effect is the farmer is spending a lot more on fertilizer, seed, and pesticides because as the crops grow, you have sensors from everything from drone to ground sensors used correctly can determine blights, afflictions on the soil. The soil, the crop, the growth rate, and insects that are there. Mass spraying of pesticides can be dramatically curtailed with good sensor technology. I'm not going to geek out and go into the details here because we want to keep it high level. And you can, by all means, just start researching. It's there. And you want to see it done right. Don't go to where the American universities are. The American universities are still, I'll use the old metaphor, they're contemplating their umbilical cord with the precision ag. They just can't stop analyzing it. But the people who are doing it effectively is Germany, France, India, Israel. They're the ones who are really leading it and doing really well with it. And it's just very simple. Put sensors out there, play around with it. You might get it right, you might get it wrong. Get sensors out there reporting to you. So imagine a farmer with a dashboard. Imagine a farmer, a high tech farmer with a computer or a dashboard or a phone, and he can basically pull up a digital map color of his farm with color coordinated lots, and it can basically do analysis based on a holistic system of layers of satellite to drone to sensors, and this is all telling him we recommend you use X amount of seed to grow, and you'll get this amount of crop. And then once you get this amount of crop, we recommend you use this amount of pesticide. And then based on what we think the sensor is going to tell you, but confirm during the time to make the decision. And then we recommend A, B, and C in terms of what you're going to plant next year. That is the future, and that can be done now, and it's being done. But we're too stupid in America to figure that out because our USDA is a tremendous complex bureaucracy that's overly politicized with appointees. And our farming community is completely addicted to subsidies. And they're in a way that is not good for them or anybody else. And then we have big agricultural companies and chemical companies that want to absorb precision ag for themselves. And they're, of course, making it through their own economic massaging, making it almost impossible. Well, it is impossible for the farmer to afford. What's the way around it? The way around it is local communities getting government grants and asking for private equity investments into their communities in order to rebuild the old farming infrastructure and use their municipal lands to get farming done, and then establishing local markets, subsidizing them to basically re-kickstart an agricultural economy. That's the quick way to do it. The long way to do it is let everything collapse and fail and just rebuild America. But America took hundreds of years to build. I mean, before the American Revolution, German immigrants and English immigrants and the Scotch Irish immigrants were working their asses off to and giving their lives, dying in the process to create an agricultural mecca out of a very, very brutal and uninhabitable wilderness. But the East Coast, especially, is swimming in water and rich in natural resources. And America is just such a rich country. I mean, everything you could possibly ask for is in this nation state we call the United States of America. So the technology's here, and I'm just talking crops. Now let's talk livestock. Let's talk livestock. We got to dispel the environmental catastrophes that are going on with mass livestock. I'm telling you, that's the feedlots. Not only is the feedlots, it's with large dispersed grazing patterns that are being done by the ranches out west. And these are very bad for the animals, and it's making the growth, what they're eating, it's making their forage worse and worse and worse. Because instead of getting lush green pasture, the soil's getting worse and worse, and it's producing crap. It's producing the kind of legumes, the kind of grasses that grow that aren't really good. I mean, if anybody's ever tasted gaminess, especially if anybody's ever been antelope hunting or hunted deer and eaten deer that are from high desert, it's very, very difficult to enjoy that level of venison. And the reason is because of what they eat. Most all hunters will turn that food into burger, or they will go through huge, long efforts in order to make that kind of venison palatable. And it's just the reason why there's nothing keeping these herds of antelope and cattle tight. Nothing keeps them tight. There's not enough numbers anyway. There's not enough of them. And when they're tight, they fertilize the soil. And what traditionally kept them tight was predators. But the only option is what are we going to bring wolves back to the level where they plagued the West? This is going to be crazy. So we got this dilemma. We're in the horns of a dilemma. How do we create intensive grazing and at the same time being able to keep that mass amount of livestock that we can produce? Well, there's ways to do that. First of all, we need cattle ranching on the East Coast. We need to bring it back and we need to make it successful. Cattle, sheep, wild pigs, we need to make that successful on the East Coast because here we actually have the forage and the land and the resources to sustain them in the correct manner. And what you need is a number of things. You need geothermal waters, you need fencing, and you need very good land management practices, and you need very good herding practices. It's not just let the cattle go up into the range and forget about them until it's time to round them up, and then you round them up and take them to market. Well, that's not going to work on the East Coast. We're too populated, it's too narrow. And Europe doesn't do it that way at all. And believe me, I'm no what do they call it? A Europhile. I'm no one who says, "Oh, the Europeans are better than us." No, they're not. We're this nation. Listen, this nation was the golden ticket for the planet Earth. I mean, not only did we save the world in two wars, not only have we invented pretty much every technology known to man, and not only had we taken the values of enlightenment and rationale and taught the world that, not only did we exemplified the individual right and the way to operate an effective republic in this era. I mean, America's done all the great things, but we're not anymore. We're flapping here. We're flapping. Our system, our own systems, our own addictions from the Cold War destroying us. So with livestock, especially, the sensor technology is utterly incredible. But just so you know, I'm not a fan of drones herding animals. I'm not. I think that's a stupid idea, a very stupid idea. Dogs and humans on horses are the best thing for herding animals. Animals are not are they're not like humans smart, but they have very good instincts, and they know a drone isn't going to herd them. It may work once or twice, but then they're going to get used to it. Animals need to be herded by dogs and men on horses or ATVs or quads. They need to be herded by living things on vehicles pushing them. So you have to basically mimic the predator in a realistic way for animals to respond to being herded. They're not going to be herded by a drone. I don't care if there's barking noises on it or not. It won't be effective. So what has to happen with livestock is a combination of monitoring and tracking, very good fencing. I'm not talking three strands of an electric fence. I'm talking very good field fencing where sensors can determine if there's breaches because getting large amounts of animals escaping fencing can be a disaster, a liability disaster. I mean, one cow gets loose in New Jersey and it can end up on Highway 80 and the state troopers have to chase it off. They have ton of. So imagine 100 cows getting loose and blocking 80 from a major commute. That would be a disaster. So technology in terms of containing animals, tracking them, and then monitoring. So here's what sensors exist today. They have sensors that when the cows come in to feed, because during the winter they don't graze, you have to bring them into feeders to give them hay or to give them grain or whatever you want to feed your cows with. Same thing with sheep, same thing with any animal. That a tag on them or a harness on them with sensors can report to an oversensor their health and nutrition. So you can determine which one of your animals need a veterinarian as opposed to having to take all the animals, put them in pens, and have the vet go through all of them and then charge you a huge bill. This would save the farmers so much money. It won't put the vets out of business because if everybody's doing it, the vets can logically get out to more farms and they can actually get more. So, and the vets can actually get into operating these sensors and managing these sensors. And if I was a veterinarian for livestock, I'd be selling the service of, hey, I'll read your cow sensors for you and I'll give you the assessment ahead of time. And then I'll even come and pick up your cow for you and I'll do it as a service, much more proactive. So there's ways around this stuff. With sensors on livestock, you can also put them on their tail to determine when they're about to calve or when they're about to drop their offspring. For herd management, this is brilliant. Anybody who tells you, any farmer or rancher who tells you they don't lose calves is lying to you. Nature's evil and nature is rough and nature is cruel. Cows will give birth in the middle of the night. They'll give birth when you don't expect it. They'll give birth when nobody's around. And if there's a problem, the calf dies, the cow dies, the lamb dies, the ewe dies. All this stuff is bad. I mean, farmers will do their best to try to save it, but sometimes it'll be too late. The cattle sensor, the livestock sensor that goes off when the animal's about to birth, bang, go right out there and save the animal. Go right out there and get the veterinarian out there. These are the kinds of things. And oh, by the way, it never goes on time. Calculating when an animal is going to give birth, it's a lot harder and nowhere near as diligent as when a woman. And even then, we can't even do humans and get it right when humans are going to give birth exactly. But with livestock, it's even there's so many dynamics. They're outside, the weather shifts. All of a sudden, it gets hotter. All of a sudden, it gets colder. Something spooks it, and it feels like it has to give birth right away. All these things happen with livestock. So those are livestock sensors. So we talked about drones, we talked about satellites, we talk about soil sensors, and we talk about livestock sensors. Now, these sensor platforms can be rented or purchased by local communities for farms using federal grant money, using their own funds, using state farm bills. I mean, there's so many ways to fund this. All you need is just some smart legislators and some grant writers, and it can be done very easily. And if sponsored by your local politicos, like I'm trying to get ours in New Jersey to do, and I do have some help from some guys, by sponsoring them, we can get this done. We can get this done, and it's so realistic, and it's not hard. $200,000, $300,000 to a county of 400, 500,000 people. $200,000 to $300,000 in grant money for free. You can basically precision agriculture equip almost all of your farmlands. Almost all of your operational farms can be equipped by this. It's too easy. And of course, they're not doing it because, frankly, we don't elect smart people and we don't elect competent people. We don't elect people that are effective. Our elections, especially locally, are popularity contests, and they're plagued with bureaucrats that actually run these municipalities, but not effectively. And it's also thwarted a lot by local interests who, if they're not going to get a cut or they don't feel it's their idea, they want to shoot it down. So it's a difficult thing. Some guy like me who's just a military retiree, who's not very wealthy, who's not very influential, I'm doing my best. I'm a big time pusher of precision ag. I call myself a precision agriculture advocate, but we need more help. We need more. Now, there are some guys who are doing it. Especially in New Jersey, we do have some local senators and local assemblymen who are about this. And then one of them in particular is doing a lot of work on it, which I'm very happy about. But we're not there yet. That's why I'm making this video. This is something I believe the Republican Party should own. I don't believe the Democrat Party would be interested in this. We tried with the proposal with a Democratic congressman. They blew it off. They took a big proposal. I did a lot of work on it. I did it at the suggestion of one of my own one of my representatives who wanted to do a bipartisan with the Democrat congressman, and the Democrat congressman's office blew it off. And the reason they blew it off, I think, was because number one, they knew we were conservatives and didn't like them, and I think number two, there wasn't enough money in it. I mean, why would a congressman who has $13 million war chest and deals in high levels of contracts of the 80, 90, 100 million, why would he care about getting a few $100,000 of sensors to farmers? Didn't care. So I think this is something that should be owned by the Republican Party. I think precision agriculture and agricultural reform should be owned by the Republican Party. I believe its way of success is not top down. It should be bottom up. It should be municipalities and counties. A municipality should look at their municipal lands, figure out which one of the municipal lands that are most advantageous to certain agricultural pursuits. They should then sponsor the development of them, and then they should allow farmers for free to work that land and produce off that land and profit off that land on the condition that their product goes into local farmers markets. And I think if small towns did this around America, we would have an incredible renaissance in our agricultural industry, a renaissance that would benefit us for generations to come. So, USDA grants, farm bills and legislation, and local municipal funding, nested with very sound planning, a combination of science, agronomists, farmers themselves, and local agricultural boards, and then and then of course environmental people who understand highest the best use of the environment. And then economic planning, sound economic planning. This initiative, there isn't a bottom line in it. The only people who are going to make a profit on this are the implementers of these programs, the people you hire to actually get it done, and the farmers themselves. I don't believe, and then the people are going to benefit by getting local farm to table food where they know exactly what was put into it and it can be regulated a lot more effectively rather than trusting big ag to grab food from who knows where in the world or the country and just stick it in a grocery store and expect you to buy it. So that's what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting an agricultural renaissance oriented on precision agriculture and very decisive and aggressive municipal support. Think about the jobs this could bring in. One of the conditions to a farmer accepting free precision agriculture technology and free land to farm, one of the conditions should be to the farmer is that he hires local people. That could be one of the conditions. And maybe if they can, subsidize their benefits. So the form a group of 25 to 30 farm workers for the county or a municipality. They get county benefits. They get town benefits. Whatever benefits you give a town worker, you give them. The farmer pays them, and during the important parts of the seasons, they operate and work for that farmer. It's kind of like a system I would like to put forth. I would love to be implement this. I'm working on it, and I suggest this become the way of the future. So thank you. I believe I've used enough of your time. I appreciate it if you watch this whole video. And what I'd ask is you consider precision agriculture, advocate to your local representatives to look into this, and remember, you heard it on Climb to Glory. That was the motto of my old division where I did most of my got most of my combat deployment experience from 10th Mountain Division. Great military organization. So I ask that you look into precision ag, advocate for it, and if you're in any kind of place of political or economic influence, I suggest you take initiatives to do it. I have detailed planning and strategies for this. I've worked with people all over the world. I'm happy for anybody here to contact me, and I can talk about this all day. And I will help plan, strategize, formulate strategies, and the key to this is implementation. The hardest part of all of this is implementing it and implementing it well. And the people you need for this, I love farmers, but you don't need farmers implementing this. You need very astute, very determined program managers, people with operational, business, or military backgrounds who love agriculture and are very good at getting things done. And then they need to be empowered and resourced to go do so. And this is what I believe the future should be. And I think that this vision is something that can really save a lot of our communities in the turbulent times to come. Anyway, thank you for watching Climb to Glory. Please like and subscribe. Contact me if you need me. And God bless everybody and God bless America. Everybody, have a great night. Bye.